So what does all this mean when we leave here? This means that organizations must become more data centric. So even if you're data centric right now, you're probably not as data centric as we think you're going to need to be. Because the more data centric you are easily able to identify the risks and challenges and develop your risk mitigation strategies. Are you ready for the next pandemic? What does that mean? Do you have the right supply at any given point in time? How can you ramp up? Where would you ramp up? Where would your workers work? All of this information should be collected so that you can then create these predictive models to help develop these risk mitigation strategies, your disaster recovery plans, and enhance your overall capability. There are some specific AI solutions. I'll just go through a few within each, and if you want, I can provide these later for you. But in the finance area, things like commercial real estate, changing work patterns where people will not need larger offices is going to affect commercial real estate. Smaller offices mean a little smaller targets in multiple areas. So there's going to be need to identify the best areas for investment. Less contact with people means you're going to have more fraud. If I could do my loan applications more and more remotely, I don't have to go in, I don't have a signature. What about my ID? You're going to have more fraud within the marketplace that needs to be looked at. Beyond the normal economic challenges, we have retail banking, contactless banking. How do I work with my banker without actually being there? And a final one, which is important for cloud-based companies, is there's going to be the demand for more unstructured data for your natural language processing, for information around the world to start identifying different hotspots. What's the trend? What's happening? And this will need to be done in multiple languages. In the healthcare space, we have epidemic response, obviously, that's going on. We need better data collection, more advanced modeling, and we need to do a better job in that area because one of the challenges we think that occurs is like the hurricanes. When a hurricane comes and it's about to hit, you have a group of people say, oh, it's not going to hit me. Then it turns and they say, see, I was right. That leads to an insensitivity among customers or amongst the population about those models. So there's a real importance to not only get it right, but to convey where it may or may not be wrong. Telehealth will be huge. Right now, this wave of doing telehealth, we do not think is going to go away. It's going to decrease costs for doctors. It's not going to necessarily decrease quality. It might actually increase quality because you'll be able to stay at home and get treated as opposed to going to a hospital or a provider's office. However, there are some areas in telehealth that they have to look at and specifically deals with fraud, where doctors say they saw a patient when they didn't. So they need to monitor that as well. This leads to the concept of data interconnection. Again, just like we talked about with the other industries, the hospitals need to be more integrated with their data, not necessarily at just some electronic health exchange, but they need to have more interconnection between them almost directly. And so that's something that we're seeing some movement as well in some of the other magazine articles. You're going to have advances in treatments, and then natural language processing is a huge area for healthcare because you will be able to analyze comments from patients, nurses, and doctors for better care, to understand what's really going on. What are the key words? You know, they talked about with COVID-19, people started reporting, loss of smell and a loss of taste. Well, if that was somewhere in notes, the AI and ML could probably pick that up. But if you have your traditional EHR systems where you just have checkboxes, if you don't have a checkbox for loss of sense and smell, you can't find that. So we think there's going to be a huge area of natural language processing that's going to increase. If you're in the retail business, your customer traffic is going to change greatly. You're going to have to manage your flow of customers in retail stores. They might look to minimize contact points. Instead of funneling everybody into one particular retail cashier, you might have to spread them out and allow people to migrate using their phones to tell them which one is the best place to go to. Automatic replenishment stores can predict purchases and have products on hand to minimize surges. They can also share replenishment areas, just like a warehouse does. AI delivery, automatic delivery of products, prescriptions, and groceries. This can be done, obviously, through the traditional sources or through others. Another one's the virtual reality experience to enable customers to experience products prior to purchase. So this is an interesting one. It's not so much an AI, ML, but it kind of falls, virtual reality does fall within AI technologies, especially if you allow them to change and you can modify their experience as they're working it. And then enhance customer service and targeting, which should be obvious. Now with technology, if you're in the technology space, there's an increased data requirement. You're going to have to create these larger repositories collect information. There's going to be requirements for different types of data. Shared repositories, we think, will become much more prevalent. The ability for companies and organizations and industries to share data, non-sensitive data, but share data, is going to be critical to responding to crises like the one we're seeing right now. Augment existing services. Customers are going to look for AI solutions from vendors to provide competitive advantage. They're not necessarily going to have the skill or the wherewithal to build their own, but they're going to look for competent and accurate and acute AI solutions that they can embed within their organization. For managed services providers, predicting outages, this is key. Some of the managed services providers may have seen an increase or an uptick in cybersecurity issues or cybersecurity related attacks. And that's because some external entities are trying to increase their attacks because they believe that the guard is down. But you can also use this to predict outages and slowdowns. But you can also provide insights to your customers in changes in activity. Bandwidth is increasing, the number of clicks are increasing, the bandwidth is increasing, number of requests are increasing, not just for your company, but for a lot of companies, and this may mean something. MSPs could be a first line of defense in understanding what's actually happening. In fact, even in the recovery, we think one of the things will be also with MSPs is looking at the network bandwidth traffic, looking at the increased traffic associated with economic activity. New solutions as well can be created. We know a couple of companies, Brandon Systems in Farmingdale is actually creating software to track COVID cases in a crisis management software. And that's something that can be used by companies or counties and so forth. These are types of solutions that will occur. And then increased partnership skills held by tech companies can be shared. We can share this AI and ML skill set to enhance the overall experience. And finally, in manufacturing, we think a couple things. We think simulations are going to be much bigger in manufacturing than anywhere else to increase so the work traffic pattern in warehouses, as well as simulate the flow of product through their supply chain. We know that 3M is having some issues with their supply chain. It is fairly antiquated in its scheme, not in the technology behind it. The problem is they need to consider different ways of operating, and I think they're in the process of doing that. New products can be created using AI and ML. Why? Because you're looking at the different attributes. You can simulate and aggregate the information of folks, of customer behavior. Direct delivery. Manufacturers may not need to go through a distributor or a wholesaler. So this disintermediation that occurred with e-commerce at one point and then came back could actually go away again, in the sense of, if I'm looking for product, I can get it directly from the manufacturer and figure out different logistics systems to get it to my company or get it directly to the consumer. So in other words, you have your warehouses, instead of having real warehouses, you have mobile warehouses, which are trucks. Truck driver has everything on a pallet or everything in there, and he can deliver the various products that they need to deliver to various customers. No different than a UPS. And automation warehouses will increase their use of AI in their warehouses and in their distribution facilities to move products, thereby reducing contact between employees.